You're watching Informed TV or the Informed TV channel on YouTube. Hi Minnesota, and all you people that come to Minnesota to enjoy the land of 10,000 lakes, whether you're a boater, fisherman, or just a pleasure craft user or cabin or resort guest. It's important to watch this program to see what zoning needs to do to make sure these lakes remain accessible to all, as well as insight on local governance in outstate Minnesota relating to the 10,000 lakes of Minnesota, and broadcast on Minnesota Public TV as well as the surrounding public TV outlets. Well, I'm Alan Repke, Informed TV in Alexandria. The lure and the Zorbaz here have just brought incredible crowds to Alexandria for good food and good times. There's Lahamadou Bay out in the distance there, and with all the boat traffic, the demand for additional fuel is needed. And I can't believe that City Hall here has people on staff that aren't in favor of that, as well as bringing air service into the Alexandria Airport if we do the right changes that Alan Repke wants, and stretching those runways a little bit with some displaced threshold. Hi Alexandria and the Alexandria Lakes area. I'm Alan Repke, Informed TV, Box 333, Alexandria, Minnesota. I'm about to put a half-hour clip from a July 24th City Council meeting here in Alexandria. I think you'll find it fascinating because it gives you some insight on civics. We're getting our students back to school, both at a technical college or grade schools and our high schools. And I think this is something they should look at, as well as you citizens. Listen extremely close, because there's a lot of interesting thought process in here and opinions. So I'm going to put a few leads when I cut it for some breaks to help you understand what they're talking about. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a prime spot to put a fuel station for our boats and pontoons and jet skis and whatever. And it's in an area where anybody can stop and have a bite to eat and look at the lake or pull their boat in. So I think it's very important that you take a serious look at this, even with your kids, to watch the process of government work. And it's something I didn't get paid for. No one recruited me. But the reality is, I used to have a 12,500 gallon diesel fuel tank for years that I used in my farming operation and rail loading facility from a standpoint, so I understand fuel and the issues. I was also on the Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Co-op board for 9 years, and that board, when I came on, was struggling big time, and within a couple years we had our golden goose. And what I'm getting at here when we talk about fuel, we used to bring in thousands, probably better say millions of gallons of fuel into there. We bought our own coal unit trains in. We bought heavy oil in as a backup if we had problem with coal. And so from a standpoint, when I talk about fuel issues and issues of the day, I'm talking from real live experience. So watch this, and they keep talking about a finding of fact. And too much of the finding of fact now is based on boilerplate, old rules. And when we look at our modern society, we need some zoning changes so that the zones serve everybody and not just the select few. enjoy this 30-minute piece. I'm not cutting anything out. I'm splitting it a little to add some things so you can better understand what they're talking about and what they should accomplish. And the interesting thing, maybe the wisdom of some of our forefathers that were in the state of Minnesota, maybe the best way to assure that we get that fuel filling point on Lahamadou Bay is they simply do nothing. So we don't have any politician when it takes a 2/3 majority vote, and when you have a 5-person council, it gets into some interesting numbers and interesting policies. So take a look, share it with your family, share it with your friends. I'm Alan Repke.
The next item in front of the Commission was another public hearing. This is a multi-part request submitted by Kevin Hansen doing business as Zorbaz. These applications seek to amend the city's zoning map to rezone property from R1 single-family residential to B1 general business, and to amend the city's comprehensive plan accordingly. Comprehensive plan shows this as low to medium density residential, and the request would be to change that comprehensive plan's future land use to general commercial. The second part of the request is a variance from the shoreline setback for a structure. The intent is to put a fuel pump on the shoreline of Lake Lahamadou to do dockside fueling for boats. The second variance is a variance request from the street setback of a county highway. County highways carry a setback of 50 feet from the right-of-way, and again, this lot itself is only 30 feet wide at its widest, and the variance requested from the lake setback is a variance of 40 feet to place that pump within 10 feet of the lake, 10 feet 7 inches. And on the street side, it's a variance of 40 feet to place that pump within 10 feet of the county road right-of-way. So 2 variances. And then finally, a conditional use permit to allow the installation of that fuel pump on the shoreline of the lake. You'll see that the Planning Commission devoted quite a bit of time to this one, as is appropriate. It's a significant request. I should also note that this request, or these requests, have a companion application that's next on the agenda, and that companion application would be a conditional use permit to place a 12,000 gallon used above ground storage tank with motor fuel in it, that to be placed on the west side of the Zorbaz restaurant. So that's a tank roughly 32 feet in length and 8 feet in diameter. Keep in mind that that's a conditional use in that zoning district. That's a B1 general business zoning district now, the restaurant is, and that use is allowed, that open and outdoor storage is allowed in that zoning district. But that's not the request we're talking about right now. I just want to let you know that there was at that point a companion application.
These modern big wake boats and big pontoons, they burn a lot of fuel. And what Zorbaz is doing here is replacing a tank that hasn't been used for years and just bringing a pump over by the lake. And look at how short the hose will need to be to fill these big boats and pontoons on a regular basis. The plan that Kevin has presented to the city needs to be fully endorsed. You see how short the docks are right here? They're not going to run hose out from 75 to 200 feet like some other locations, but I have no problem with that either, because if there is an accident, you have to remember gasoline floats on the top of water. Sir, what do you think? Should we have a new fueling station here at Zorbaz?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Very good. So do I. Sir, would you like to see a fueling station here at Zorbaz Docks?
I sure would. That'd be a great thing to have in the community, and it'd be convenient as heck. So thank you.
Yes, so do I. Taking off now with their jet skis. And as you see, the other boat's leaving. Perfect place to have a fueling station. A modern one with all the safeguards. people can have a great time in the Alexandria Lakes area.
So we spent quite a bit of time talking about the rezoning request, because on this lot, if this lot is not rezoned, then the variance requests must fail and the conditional use permit must fail, because the installation of the pump itself cannot be allowed in the residential zoning district. So we kind of went through that. You'll see that there's a lot of narrative in here beginning on page 93 relative to the rezoning request. We did have some additional conversation about the two variance requests and the conditional use permit request, but as is appropriate, the Planning Commission took action on that rezoning request first. And so the recommendation from the staff and as approved by the Planning Commission was to deny that rezoning request. I would note that we had, so you see all the chairs here tonight, they were all filled on Monday evening. It was a big crowd for a Planning Commission meeting. And we had quite a series of speakers. We also had, I believe, 10 either, I won't say transcribed, but paraphrased voice messages left to be read into the public record, along with emails that were read into the public record as well. I think we had 10 of those, in addition to the speakers who were present that evening. Following that extensive discussion, a motion was made to deny the zoning district amendment, the rezoning amendment, DA 23-003, based on the following findings of fact. And Madam Mayor, with your permission, I'll read these findings of fact for the public record.
Please.
Number one, the request is not consistent with the city's comprehensive plan in that the plan identifies this property as low to medium density residential. Number two, the request does not meet land area and setback requirements. The land area required for a commercial lot is 9,000 square feet. This lot provides land area of 2,168 square feet. Additionally, the setbacks required are 50 feet from the county road and 50 feet from the lake. The setbacks provided by the request are 10 feet from the road and 10 feet, 7 inches from the lake, not consistent with the shoreland rules. We found that it is unknown whether the request would depreciate the surrounding area. Number four, the request is not consistent with the character of the surrounding area, as all lakeside lots are zoned residential. Number five, existing or proposed utilities are adequate to accommodate the request. This pump requires no wet utilities, water and sanitary sewer are not required here, so that's not applicable. Number six, existing or proposed streets are not adequate to handle the request. County State Aid Highway 42 is 44 feet wide with a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, carrying 7,200 vehicles a day based on the 2018 traffic count done by MnDOT. So this is a fairly high-speed road being traveled frequently, and the placement of a pump within 10 feet of that road does not seem to be in keeping with public safety. Number seven, the request will not place any undue burden on the city, financial burden on the city. We're not involved in this project in any way. Number eight, there have been no significant unanticipated changes due to changes in technology, urban development, or social behavior. Number nine, no community policies have changed that would warrant this request. Number 10, no mistakes were made at the time the plan was developed or the zoning ordinance was adopted. And number 11, will the rezoning result in spot zoning? And the answer is yes. No other lakeside parcels on Lake Lahamadou within the city are zoned commercial. So this would be a spot zone as well. So based on those findings of fact, the Planning Commission comes to you with a recommendation, not unanimous recommendation, but a 4-to-1 recommendation to deny this request based on those findings of fact. That is request DA 23-003.
Council, would you like to take?
I'd move to approve the proposed rezoning from residential to B1.
We have a motion to approve rezoning. Alrighty then. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I could just step in for a second then. If the motion is to approve it, because that would be inconsistent with the Planning Commission findings of fact and recommendations, we would ask that the council would need to articulate separate findings or basis to support then the approval.
Okay, council? Questions? Discussion?
I disagree with it. It was voted down by the same council, well, not the same council, but a few years ago. And that's not a condition. I mean, we got residential, we're sticking a commercial strip right in there with the traffic and everything else and getting commercial there. That just does not fit our guidelines.
I just think we are looking at a master plan from 2007 when the average boat was 17 feet, had a 20 gallon tank that you could fill up with a couple 5-gallon containers from your dock. Now the average boat is 25 feet, carries a gas tank of 65 gallons. I think it's probably the most safest solution for obtaining gas on the whole chain if it's done according to the current technology that they're proposing.
We have a fill, in Geneva has a fill station on the lake, and I think, doesn't Carlos have one also?
Carlos has one, yes.
So we've got on the chain.
Just to be fair, the Carlos Marina is, I don't know how many miles.
Correct.
You know, not as the crow flies, right? It's, you have to, if you're at, let's say you're in that bay, Bugaboo Bay or Lahamadu Bay, whatever you call it. That's probably a 45-minute boat ride to the marina, and that's if you want to go to Geneva, hope you got a real skinny boat. So,
and the other thing is too, with the large boats that we have, one of the big fears is all the wakes that are causing erosion on the shoreline. So if you're suddenly having to go 10 miles along all that shoreline, creating all that erosion versus having one right there on the Hamadu, to me, this is the best option for the environment.
to Scott's point, I mean, the alternative is, like he mentioned, people lugging gasoline down to their boats. How often does someone, take a couple big, jugs of gas, go down there and they dump, who knows how much of it ends up in the water because they don't, dump it accurately, or they fumble, or they whatever. So, it's to Scott's point, it's a really well taken point that there's not a lot of great other options to get gas in your boat, unless you're trailering it all the time. But obviously, there's a whole lot of people that have them on lifts.
I guess I'm confused in that they aren't going to have a vehicle if they're coming in by boat. Where are they going to get the gas can and carry it across the road to dump it in there?
No, what I'm saying is let's say their boat is docked, it's on a lift at their home, and that's where they're going to fill up with gas.
Yep.
The issue is, and actually a few people have brought this up to me recently, if they're a little bit older or maybe not able to carry big tanks of gas, that's one thing. B, if they get the big, containers of gas down there, how do they get them up on the boat without, dumping a half a gallon of gas directly into the lake? So, and that may be, not everybody's doing that, but it's a concern. And getting gas in your boat that's on a lift we're in lakes country. It's a concern.
Well, you're saying, coming in from cars, but Geneva has a filling station, gas filling.
Yeah, but
That's the opposite side. So you can get gas from either direction.
But not all boats can get to Geneva because it's so narrow.
Maybe that's why I meant you better have a skinny boat. That's an extremely difficult double channel to get through. I mean, one's skinny and sort of tall, and one's wide and super short, short. So unless you have a very specific type of boat and the water is just high enough or low enough, it's tough to get you to Geneva.
And into Lake Geneva. think we all should be happy with Nicole, Scott, and Andrew doing some challenging of the old guard, and their discussion on Geneva Beach Resort on the south end of Lake Geneva, a nice family resort with a big cabin for various functions. And our proposal, or the proposal of Zorbaz, is to put a fueling station there. And when we talk about miles, taking the boat down to Geneva Beach Road, where they have a 500-gallon tank, I did my finding of facts and drove there and talked to the new owner. He's been there a couple years now, from Iowa, really nice guy. And I asked him about his tank and what he thought of adding a site to Zorbaz, and he said, fine. He said, Alan, all I do is provide gasoline for my own boats, as well as, I believe, to his customers, at least according to his website. So he said, I don't care that they're doing it at all. I don't want to be in the gas peddling business. I want to take care of my guests and my own boats. And what you have to understand here as well, when I do the Google search of running down there from Zorbaz to the end of Lake Geneva, it's 5.14 miles there as well. So every location that they're going to be talking about here has anywhere from 5 to 5.5 to 6.5 plus. And I don't criticize the council members when they say 10 miles. Is what we're getting at is it's a long ride up to the Lake Carlos Marina. And so when it comes to Geneva, the finding of facts says that they're not a factor. And like both Andrew and Nicole pointed out, this is an extremely tight pass. Our Republicans failed to get the bonding through. They were going to raise that, former Senator Ingebrigtsen, but when they wanted to wait till the next year when they controlled everything, and it turned out they controlled nothing. So unfortunately, we didn't get an enlargement of that bridge so we could get pontoons and large boats down there. But this is what I just want to show you folks quick, what we're talking about. From Zorbaz down to the end of Lake Geneva is over 5 miles. Now we're looking at the route that they talked about from Zorbaz all the way up to the north end of Lake Carlos and the marina there, as right next to the state park there. That turns out to be, using my Google map, a little over 6.5 miles. So it is a jaunt to get up there. The other thing I found there is that they had a 1,000-gallon tank, and theirs was fairly close to the lake as well, as up on the hill right next to their house and business showroom there, that was also double walled and met the qualifications to be there. And their pipe ran in front of their establishment there, between their house showroom and the lake, that ran on steel pipe down to their dock. And then it looks like about 150 feet to me anyway. It was a good jaunt out there. And they do their metering with a nozzle that has the gallons pumped. And they just have a notepad there that they bill anybody that pulls up or rents a boat or rents a pontoon from them. but they definitely sell a fair amount of gas, and I think they will continue to regardless. And the people that were filling, I think they put on just about 30 gallons and were happy to do it. And so from a standpoint, I quickly told him, I'm trying to get air service in here so you guys can fly in. And he said, oh, great. We come here 2 weeks in the summer, but we're true Minnesotans now, always will be scattered out, and we'd love to get on a plane and come in here all 4 seasons. But anyway, that's the description and the distance. The discussion about a long ride, and the other important thing about having it at Zorbaz and the lure there, people can come up if they had a few drinks and park their boat and go in and eat some food and relax a little, and on the way home, rather than having to rush way up to the north end of Lake Carlos or over to Arrowwood, they can come out and just putt-putt home, as they say, on a very safe trip. Now continuing on with Alan Repke, Inform TV's Finding of Facts. And so all the good people of Alexandria or the Alexandria Lakes area, as well as guests, have a little understanding of what Zorbaz is trying to do, and hopefully the vast majority of the council will pick up on this as well. This time I'm going to show you the path on the Google map to get over to Arrowwood here, the large resort, conference center, golf course, water park, and facilities for big group gatherings. Great place. All 3 of these places I want to prosper, as well as Zorbaz and the Lura course. And what I'm getting at here, when you would leave with a boat from the requested site for a safe tank and pump location, is you'd go out here and follow your way down here. It's a strong 5.5 miles to do that as well. So from a standpoint of, like a number of our council members pointed out, to keep wave action down, roading our shores, everything that a finding of facts when I went to talk to these people turns out to be true. Now in the case of Arrowwood, it looks to me like they've got about a 2,500 to 3,000 gallon tank, and they push it underground to their dock that they use for fueling, that's separate from the rest of the docks. And the counting of sections going out where the nozzle was hanging was about 72 feet down the dock and out to the lake. But everything I witnessed there seemed very much under control. A double wall tank about 30 feet away or so from the lake, and very flat in there. And when I talked to some of the staff, I said, how often do you fill this thing? We have our fuel supplier come and fill it or top it off every Monday. So there's definitely need for fueling in the Alexandria chain of lakes. And I see no problem whatsoever. In fact, if the council is smart enough to approve this, I think without a doubt, with Zorbaz keeping their tank anywhere from 200 to 300 feet from the lake, and having, now Kevin was talking to me just on 7th of August or 8th of August, something like that, of he's thinking about dropping the size down to a 6,000 gallon tank, about half the size. And I told him, Kevin, as close as you are to the terminal here, that'll suit you well. So whether he does that or not, that remains to be seen, but he was talking strongly about dropping to a 6,000 gallon tank. And so he could serve the people, his guests and customers, both at the Zorbaz and the Lure. I just wanted to get a little understanding of the discussion that just went on with the first segment here. Alan Repke's finding of facts, actually going to the locations and reporting back to what I found and what these 3 locations said to me anyway, and I assume it's correct.
So a question to Mike, if this goes through as zone commercial, can other stuff go in there too because it's zone commercial?
You would almost certainly have additional requests that would be eligible to be placed there. They'll all require a variance. If you grant this variance, it would be hard not to grant another one. Madam Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to just clarify a couple of things. So the comprehensive plan that we
You have my
referenced
permission.
Thank you very much. The comprehensive plan that we referenced in the code, the quotation is from the 2007 plan, but the current plan is from the 2020 plan, Alexandria 2040, which says the same. It incorporates that same philosophy about lakeside lots. In addition to the fueling stations that have been discussed, Arrowwood Resort has a dockside fueling as well on Lake Tarleton.
The key is dockside. Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Mike. But the key is dockside.
Yes.
Versus Zorbaz, which would be hundreds of feet behind the building.
No, the storage tank.
The tank is where my risk is, in
my
my mind. The tank is where my risk is. The pump itself, based on the new technology, I think the spill that you're going to be subjected to is minimal at worst.
I think the testimony we had on that from the tank supplier was the tank would have an automatic shutoff after 3 gallons was spilled.
So where does the DNR come into it?
They don't. So this is on the land above the ordinary high water mark. They have no jurisdiction there. Their jurisdiction would be if a marina were requested here, a boat marina with services, that would be a DNR permit. In order for that to move forward, DNR requires that the land above the ordinary high water mark be zoned commercial.
Is that what it was? It was a marina a couple years ago when we denied it? Recall?
It wasn't, so there was...
Because the DNR was in the picture when we denied it back, but maybe it was a marina?
Yeah, no, it was, again, that was a request for a fueling station, dockside fueling station, on the next lakeside lot north. That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So that was a rezoning request, which, as you properly point out, was recommended for denial. But the other thing that I'd like to point out is that the discussion here really has been a lot of what's a good idea and what's not a good idea. But the question in front of you is, what are the findings of fact? And so, as Derek has properly pointed out, if you choose to approve this request, you will need to develop alternative findings of fact.
Mike, there was also noted that the 12,000 gallon tank was kind of excessive in that, and I know the neighborhood spoke towards that as well. And I don't think any of the current people that are on the lake have tanks of that size. There was concern as far as, well, I mean, just what could happen in the event that something, lightning or whatever the case may be. The other thing that was brought up was at that time that property was not owned by the same owner. Those 2 parcels, those 2 businesses were not owned by the same owner, correct?
At which time?
At the time that they initially, back in 2019 when they came before?
No, 2019, the applicant was Cole Hansen on behalf of Hansen Properties.
Okay.
So both properties, and I think you heard from Kevin Hansen, who was your applicant in this case, that yes, they're essentially the same entity. They do have different LLC names.
Okay.
I thought one of the findings of fact was that the area was not large enough.
That's correct. A commercial property would require 9,000 square feet of area, yes.
Okay.
Should also point out that The rezoning of a property from residential to commercial requires a 2/3 council majority to pass.
Questions? Discussion? Otherwise, I'll ask if there is a second to, no, wait a minute, I'm
No,
not going
actually, I
to ask
think my
that.
motion is just wrong. I don't think I can do it. Correct?
You can, but you have to have findings of fact.
Which I don't have available.
Okay. So then I suppose I could still ask for a second and nobody seconds it.
Well, if the council member wants to either clarify or
Yeah, do you want to,
revoke his motion or amend it, I suppose he could.
Or is it something that can be tabled that
Could
we
we
can have a
table it to
conversation
develop
about?
findings?
Looking for guidance here.
well, okay, so if we don't do anything with the rezoning, then does that also prevent us from moving into the variance? Because if it isn't rezoned, you don't need a variance.
That's correct. The use itself would not be allowed,
Okay,
so the structure could not be built.
okay.
So the question about could you table it, the state has a 60-day rule from the date of the application to the date, to 60 days after that application. If the governing body has not taken an action, the request is deemed automatically approved.
So all of these are approved or just the rezoning?
If you didn't take an action on the
So
rezoning,
when's the 60 days?
the 15th of August.
Like the day after next
The
meeting?
next meeting.
Okay, presently, we have a motion on the floor, correct?
We have a motion to approve the rezoning request. And Mr. Trosvig has recommended that if we're going to do that, we need to have findings of fact. And that's what we're lacking right now.
Is that something that we want to look into finding those facts, or are they not there? Like,
I'm in uncharted waters. No
yes,
pun
you
intended.
are.
I moved to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Motion to table is approved 3-2 with council members Franzine and Thalman voting no.
Thank you. Then they should probably do the same thing with the 2 variance requests. That would be,
Well, they can't happen without the other one approved,
so
can they?
the structure cannot be allowed. That's correct. And
What did you say, Mike? What
so
did the vote have to be?
Majority.
This is on the.
Oh, that's right.
This is, yep, this
For
would
tabling,
have been an
just-
action on the motion itself, but you've tabled that, so, which you could untable if you want to do, but I'm not going to suggest that, so.
Well, Alan Repke's Inform TV just showed you where the pump that would fill these boats be, and now I'm going to keep walking backwards. You folks can see where I was just at. We're still not at the location where Zorbaz is going to put their new double-walled EPA-approved tank that's built in Morris, Minnesota, just 40 miles away. See how far I am now? This hose that'll run over there will go underground just like we do with electrical lines and phone lines and internet lines, gas lines, and so on. And here is the path. It'll head underground without disturbing anything over in the area right here, about 35 feet away from any building. And in that kind of area where these evergreen trees are, probably right to the west of it, or possibly could be, I'm pretty sure it'll be the west of it, or maybe even where these vehicles are sitting. But these are top of the line tanks, double walled, plus with a catch basin underneath if something really happens. But that would only happen by some stupid, deranged individual. We have planned for these things because of past mistakes. This is the perfect spot to add another fueling station on the chain of lakes here in Alexandria.
The variance requests are included in V23-001. Again, the Planning Commission comes to you with a recommendation for denial, and with your permission, Madam Chair, I'll read those findings of fact. Number one, the question is, can the property be put to a reasonable use if the variance is denied? And, I'm sorry, the question is, the property cannot be put to a reasonable use if the variance is denied. And the answer is no. In other words, the property can be put to a reasonable use if the variance is denied, because the non-conforming lot provides both lake access and a visual amenity. Is the plight of the owner due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the property owner? And the answer is yes. It's a non-conforming lot. It's too small and not wide enough to support any kind of a structure. Number three, does the shape or condition of the property create unusual difficulties in developing the property? And again, yes, it is a non-conforming lot. Number four, have similar conditions existed or been granted to other properties in the surrounding area? And the answer is no. A similar request was denied in 2019 on an adjacent lot. And number five, is the request contrary to the spirit of the city code? And the answer is yes. The purpose of the city code, section 10.20, which is your shoreland ordinance, is to, quote, preserve and enhance the quality of surface waters, conserve the economic and natural environmental resources of shorelands, and provide for the wise use of water and related land resources of the state. There are additional 6 findings of fact that I can go through. They are more or less essentially the same as the ones that we had enunciated on the rezoning. But with those findings of fact, the Planning Commission recommends denial of V23-001.
And Mike, on the variance, does the answer to all those questions that you asked have to be yes?
No, the answer, again, it's important to know that the facts, the facts of the instant case are important to determine here.
So you want us to table that? Is that what you're looking for?
We're not gonna have to.
There's really no other action that can be taken, right?
Move to table.
Wait, I didn't get an answer to my question.
I'm sorry, so your
Question was, is there an expectation that this variance needs to be tabled because we can't legitimately take action on that until we've taken action on the rezoning?
I think that's correct. If you had acted to approve the rezoning request, then you could take an action and still deny the variance request.
Gotcha.
That's something to do. Since you have not taken an action on the rezoning request, I don't think you can legitimately take an action on the variance request or on the conditional use that follows. Derek, are you in agreement with that? Is that?
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion to table the variance request. Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. And then the third item is the conditional use permit request, C23-010, requesting the authorization to place a pump on the lakeside lot. So this is the pump on the lakeside lot. And again, we have 7 findings of fact, as enunciated in your minutes on page 103. You've heard these previously. I won't read them again. If you choose to table this, or in light of the fact that you've tabled the 2 previous applications, that probably seems like the correct direction.
Move to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table the conditional use permit. Please vote.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. So having gone through all that, the next application was a request from Kevin Hansen doing business as Zorbaz for a conditional use permit seeking to place that 12,000 gallon above ground storage tank. At the meeting on Monday night, the applicant withdrew that application. So that application is not in front of you tonight.
Oh, well, I have a question.
Yes,
Are we done talking about that particular subject?
I believe we are.
Alrighty. So, just so we all understand what needs to happen between now and the next meeting, is that, and I'm just guessing, okay, so I'm looking for some guidance, but I'm guessing that if there is an interest in passing the rezoning, it's already been discussed, somebody needs to come up with findings of fact. So I'd like to identify who somebody is. And then, if I were to speculate that that was passed, wouldn't we have to do the same thing for the variance and the conditional use permit?
You would. That's correct.
They kind of go as a set, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so back to who? I honestly don't know. I mean, at this point, if the planning commission has already given its findings of fact and made a recommendation for denial, and the council wants to overturn that decision, I kind of think it's the council's responsibility to come up with those findings of fact, and absent of that, then at the next meeting, we would go through the same process. Does that sound right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So back to who? Sorry, but I'm looking at you.
I guess that'd be me.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question of Mr. Weber?
Absolutely.
Since we're already, by the way, my computer is now flashing red. I didn't bother to bring the plug in. So pretty soon I'm powering down, but did you say the conditional use permit application was withdrawn?
It's the second conditional use permit on the, so that's the conditional use request on the above ground storage tank. Yep, so we had that was the companion piece. That would have been the public hearing that the planning commission held at 7:30. That was C23-009.
So that has to come back though.
Would have to be resubmitted. Yes.
Okay, so it's not as, I need to say this out loud so I understand the process. Even if the council came back with findings on, and approved this, which by the way, you said it has to be approved 4-1, the rezoning.
Correct, it requires 4.
Even if that's approved 4-1, that still means the conditional use permit would have to be reapplied for, go back through the planning commission and come back to the council.
That's correct.
Before this could be contemplated, because they all hang together, correct?
Well, there's no sense having a pump there if you don't have something to put with the pump. You're correct.
Seems to make sense, yes.
Yep, thank you for helping me with that. Yep.
Okay, I just,
So by rule, you said if it's not addressed by the 14th, 15th,
Yes.
you said everything is automatically
Approved.
So
So the
if it's
denial is
approved,
approved?
if the request is
No,
approved,
the request is approved.
Oh, okay.
So
Gotcha.
Request as made.
in that event, are findings not required?
I think that's a bad precedent to try and set.
Well, no, I'm just trying to understand how. I'm not saying we should go that
Yeah, no,
road, but I'm just wondering if that's, or do you create findings after the fact, or how does that work?
So if you allow something to move forward without council action, you allow it to be, you don't create any conditions. You have to allow the variance. You are not able to set any conditions on that. So it completely abdicates the city's responsibility.
So the condition, the recommended conditions, none of that would apply. It would just be whatever the straight request is.
That's right.
Understood.
If you refuse or decline to take an action on the request, state law says that 60 days after that, after the complete application was received, the request has to be approved
Got it.
or is deemed approved.
Understood. Thank you.
Sorry, one more question, Mayor, if I could.
Please.
Actually, I shouldn't say one more question, maybe one more question. But
You're plugged in now.
yeah, I know. Now, Bill gave me a, so yeah, I'm
Well, thank
perking
you.
up here.
Be here for a while.
11 o'clock.
Are we allowed to extend that review period?
We could if we were looking for additional information, but there's the information has been submitted.
Understood. Thank you.
And so if the rezoning is approved and the variances are denied, then what do we have?
Well, then you have a project that can't move forward. And that's
But
certainly
you
would be an
have,
option.
you have a spot of land that is now no longer residential.
That's correct.
It's
Nothing
commercial.
else, it's just not residential. It has changed. Okay, got it.
Somebody could
Everybody
put a-
else got it? Because there's
somebody
gonna
could
be,
put a food stand on it then.
that's right, because there's 3 weeks between now and then, so everybody understand?
Yep.
Okay, they all understand, Mike.
All right.
Well, we'll give you a little idea of the need for rezoning, and the state of Minnesota itself needs to come in on some of these lake areas and rezone this whole area, this block, or half block, 3/4 of block, down to Zorbaz should be all zoned 1 block to the west to a beautiful Minnesota lake like we have in Alexandria. There needs to be area zoned so the common person can use the beauty of the lakes as well. Fancy houses right in an area that should have been kept as zoning for commercial is just plain wrong. These kind of areas need to be stretched. Well, I just want to thank you folks for watching this video, and I also want you to remember, if you want to support additional airing of programming like this, go to Box 333 Alexandria and support the cause. The other thing I want you to do is write down Inform TV channel, because I'll post a link there with this presentation there that I want you to pass on to your legislators as well as your friends. So we start understanding in the state of Minnesota the significance of some zoning changes. So the 10,000 lakes in Minnesota are not just controlled by residential properties like they've become. And yet I'm not against cabins. I had a beautiful location in Spicer on Green Lake that have a cabin that I had for years, and I loved it there, and I'd love to get one here at some point in time. But the reality is we have to see that zoning, like we've looked here on this video, this little piece of land right here that wasn't included with the commercial property here. Some lousy lawyers were involved here when maybe before, when it was the wharf, or even before it was Bugaboo Bay. The lawyers should have seen to it that the people that had the commercial real estate on this side also enjoyed that strip of land that now is finally going to be used, hopefully, for a fuel pumping station and the ability of people to enjoy these lakes. So from a standpoint of what I want you to take to your legislator, as well as your sportsmen's clubs and those type of entities, is the fact that this cut of part of the Alexandria City Council meeting gives our legislators and concerned citizens all over Minnesota, as well as our schools, that we understand the importance of proper zoning. And the reality is here, we get Kevin taken care of here by probably the best way is just to do the city council to say, we're just going to leave this tabled motion and let the thing become, as Kevin presented, fact, as some smart legislators years ago figured out that we can't allow a small group of people to come into a meeting and just dominate everything. Just think of policies where we leave out the masses. And what I want to do in conclusion, we want, or I want, and all of us should want, that our legislators, our legacy committee, as well as our natural resources committee from both the House and Senate, or a joint committee of those, come out here and look at what we have here. Clearly, when we see what's going on here, these lots that come out to Nokomis or County Road 42 for about a 3-block area before they hit the golf course a little further up should all be commercial. This little lot here that doesn't include this big house here that should have never been allowed to put there, but it was. And the reality is, when Councilman Thalman talked about somebody could put a little food stand there, I think that'd be great at times. That somebody could sell some popcorn and hot dogs there for people biking along there or walking along there, as long as they don't interfere with the other businesses of Zorbaz and the Lure or their dock system here. And so from a standpoint, we zone this all commercial along here. This remaining little lot here is zoned commercial, and we look at these 4 properties on each side of the road here are zoned commercial. So when they come for sale, maybe some of this 3/8 of a cent sales tax should be used to see that key properties are zoned commercial so they benefit all the people of Minnesota. But that's just a thought process for you. I want to thank you for listening to this, and I would like to see an opportunity for me to put some of this type of programming on Minnesota Public TV, because it's really needed. And as well as an independent like me, get a channel back. I know what I did wrong, or I know now the people I have to avoid to stay on the air that are bullies in the system. And I just want to conclude with thanks for listening to Inform TV. Remember Box 333, Alexandria, Minnesota, as well as go to the Inform TV channel and get the link for this program and pass it on to your legislators, your political party, and especially the sportsmen's clubs around the area. And we have to make sure we don't lose any more resorts. Just came into Zorbaz for a 6-inch pizza, heading back to Appleton, Minnesota. Right across from the Lure in Alexandria, and Zorbaz on the lake here, Lake Lahamadou. Things you all need in your bucket list. The ultimate way to come to Zorbaz and the Lure in Alexandria.